Yo, what is up, my people? It's your boy Lucha Cooney back with another video for y'all today. So we are going to take a quick look at Lecrae's latest interview on this online platform called Church Leaders, where he discusses deconstruction and a few other things. So let's get into it, man. But before we do, man, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and tell a friend to tell a friend. All right, let's get into it. So in this latest interview on this platform called Church Leaders, Lecrae, who is actually with Andy Mineo when they're doing the interview, talks about deconstruction. He talks about the Christian rapper label as well, because obviously that's been a thing for a long time. He's really the one who made it, started this whole conversation of whether Christian rappers need to call themselves Christian rappers or whatever, or at least he's one of the people who popularized the discussion if he wasn't the one who started it himself. So he talks about that, and that's actually the first thing that we're going to take a look at is the portion where there is an excerpt from the interview about this particular topic. So let's take a look at this. Okay, so this is a portion about this discussion about the Christian rapper label. Okay, so this is the response from, Andy and Lecrae on the issue here. Okay, so here we go. Let's read it. So it says, the title can be useful when you're trying to find something, right? So this is the title of Christian, right? The title can be useful when you're trying to find something. For example, is there any good Christian rap out there? Oh, I found it because it was labeled that. But then it can also work against you when you're trying to reach outside of that niche. Then people like, oh, that's not for me. I think that's always been the conflict because I don't want my music to only be enjoyed by Christians. And sometimes that label can stop that. All right. So not wanting the music to be enjoyed by Christians. That's one thing altogether, right? So let's continue reading. Let's move further down here. All right. Now this is where it gets interesting to me, or where I think we start to really be able to diagnose some of the problems with the thinking behind this desire to not overtly call yourself a Christian. For example, we were in the airport the other day and an NBA player came up to Lecrae and he's like, oh my God, I love you, bro. While other players recognized he was a rapper, Lecrae told them that he was doing a show that night. All the NBA players were like, yo, what? Who was he? The NBA player who recognized Lecrae told the others, yeah, man, he's a Christian rapper. And you just watched everybody just be like, oh, I'm good. Yeah, like, oh, never mind. Now, if you just would have said, oh, he's a rapper, yeah, he's dope, they would have been like, I got to check out your music. Then they may have given it a chance. And then they might have experienced something dope or heard something that's impacting. So that's what it is. Sometimes the title is helpful and sometimes it really works against you. And that's why there's a nuanced conversation to be had. I think when I tell people that I don't want to be called a Christian rapper, they think I don't want to be a Christian. So there's just a lot of confusion. And I get why there's confusion, because it's a nuanced conversation and people don't like nuance. They like simple, fast, boxed up, easy to package. Okay, so I read all that, man, and I don't know if it's just me, man, but I read all that and I'm like, okay, so what? Like, so what? They don't like you. Like, you're a Christian. Like, the gospel is offensive. What we tell people as Christians is offensive, man. And Jesus already said, man, look, don't worry about the world hating you, paraphrasing here. They hated me first, man. The world is going to hate us, man. The world is going to hate what we do. So it's like that to me is just like, this ain't a reason. This ain't reason enough for you to think that you need to conceal your identity as a Christian in order to gain access to people's car stereos or whatever it is and get into people's Spotify playlists, whatever it is, man. I just don't see how this is being unashamed, because that's the big thing of Reach Records, right? Like that's what they've been known for. In the past, it seemed like that's really what the motivation was, or at least the stance was solid, right, in the past. But we know that after 2012, things really shifted, and it was more of this. That's when this conversation really became hot, right? This whole conversation of whether you can be a Christian rapper or not. That's when started bubbling. And since then, there's just so many moments where we're really able to, we just have no choice but to question what kind of unashamedness of the gospel this is, man. If it's, I mean, we've seen Lecrae not be able to answer simple questions like on biblical sexuality, right? On same-sex attraction, the Bible's views on same-sex attraction. He's been unable to answer that, just be forthcoming with his response in interviews. We've seen him make it a point for people to not categorize him as a Christian, even when he's winning an award for a Christian artist. He's made it a point to say, hey, yo, I'm just like Kendrick. I'm just like Lauryn Hill. I'm just here to spread positivity and yada, yada, yada. We've seen him do all this stuff, man. And so when you're coming to this point, and I'm reading this portion of the interview, and somehow this is a big deal, or this is even something that you're using as an illustration to say, hey, because of this, we need to not speak openly about being Christians. I just find this to be a really weak case for it, man. I find this to be a really weak case for it. So the next portion is where we see Lecrae talking about deconstruction. He gets asked about it, and this is his response. Let's check it out. With deconstruction being a large topic within Christian circles and something you've addressed personally, Lecrae, in your podcast, can you explain how deconstructing your faith has helped your journey as a Christian and has resulted in you growing closer to God? Lecrae, I'm really excited to talk about this in a lot more depth in the future. So really stay tuned, because I plan to write on it and I plan to do some music on it as well. I think the first problem is the etymology, or just the terms in themselves, get us too riled up. So we tend to get paranoid and freak out with terminology and start creating these categories for deconstruction that were never meant to exist, or we just lump all the negative things with the term. So now you can't say deconstruction without it meaning all of these terrible things that we're not advocating at all, because people are looking at the worst cases of deconstruction, where people have essentially said we're done with Christ and we're never coming back. And I think that's what they think a promotion of deconstruction is. So notice these are his words, a promotion of deconstruction. So he is a proponent of deconstruction. Lecrae thinks deconstruction is a good idea, and therefore, for the millions of people who listen to his music, the people who grew up on it, these are the ideas that he's bringing forth and standing behind and telling his audience that they're good ideas. Let's look at this portion right here, this paragraph here, this little chunk right here. So he says, I think the first problem is the etymology, or just the terms in themselves get us too riled up. Well, the thing is, words have meaning, right? Words do have meaning. And when we're dealing with etymology, yes, we're talking about how words and the meaning of words have changed over time and things like that. With certain words comes a certain mindset, because you can't necessarily separate terms from their origins, man. You know what I'm saying? You could try to do that. You could try to say, okay, we mean it as this and not as that. But a lot of baggage that comes with the term deconstruction, and rightfully so, because it's rooted in postmodern thought. So for you to say, well, we're trying to basically give it a new meaning, or we don't mean it this way, we don't mean it that way. And yes, that's a problem with deconstruction in general, because a lot of people mean different things when they use the term. However, the methodology that comes with it is the same. And the methodology suggests a breaking down, a tearing apart, and we'll see as they talk about it a little bit more where they come from or where they're coming from with this term and how the whole approach works in their minds. Okay, let's check this out. But what I would say is the goal of a healthy deconstruction is reconstruction. When you find out you have mold in your house, you've got to tear it out. We're not saying you break up the foundation. We're not saying you take away the foundation, which for us as followers of Christ is Jesus himself. We're not saying we remove him, but we're saying we've built a lot of things on the foundation of Jesus that should have never been. They're more cultural, they're more political, they're more economical than they are biblical or Christian. So now it's making people say, I don't even want to call myself a Christian because every time I think of Christian, I think of all these political things and all these other terms, which is making people say, I'm done with it. So if you just read this portion over here, you might actually think, okay, hey man, there's not really anything wrong with what he's saying. He's just talking about removing the things that were built on the foundation of Christ, which shouldn't have been there, and all that sort of stuff. We'll read a little bit further and you'll see where this line of thinking has led him. All right, so let's actually go down a little bit further, and I just want you to take note of the categories that he's talking about here. Right, so he's talking about the categories of things that are cultural, things that are political, things that are economical, right? And these things are not biblical. So we're not talking about necessarily bad theology here. He's not talking about bad theology being the thing that he's deconstructing from. He's deconstructing from other stuff. So just take a note of that, and let's keep going. So let's read this next portion because this is where it really gets problematic over here. So I'm okay with a healthy deconstruction, which is one where the goal is to build back up. I want to build, but I've got to tear down all these things because I don't know where the mold is. So I know you guys think I hate church because I'm not going for a season, but I don't know if that's where I'm being triggered. So for a season, I'm not going to go there. I need to figure out what this means and process it. I think that if we're really serious about our faith, we are walking with people through that process. You got to think the disciples walked with Jesus for 3 years and they didn't really get it until it was over. So on one hand, you're talking about not tearing down the foundation, which is Christ. And then on the other hand, you are somehow in your thought process, you think it's okay to break away from the things that Christ has commanded us to do. There are several parts of the New Testament that show us God's heart for his church. Okay. And yes, we're talking about the church universal, but the local church setting, because the local church, all the little local churches are what make up the church universal. This is who Jesus died for, the church, his body, his people. And he did not die for us as members of the church so that we can then abandon the church, remove ourselves from the fellowship in the name of trying to figure out things. And then words for you to say that the church is somehow a trigger for you, that you don't know if going to church in and of itself is a trigger for you. Look, man, if going to church is a trigger for you, there is a problem. There is a problem, right? There's a huge problem if you think that somehow when you go to church, the action of you going to church and you sitting in a church is somehow a trigger for you. And notice, like I said, I'm not talking about an unhealthy church. We're not talking about a false church that you find out that the teaching there is no longer what you thought it was, or that people have gone astray in how they're applying certain parts of the scriptures. This is not what we're talking about. This is not about theology. This is not about the doctrine of the church. This is about him making a decision to say, I'm not going to church as part of this deconstruction process, which again, like we said, like he said, is not meant to break the foundation. Well, this is breaking the foundation. This is actually you breaking the foundation. This is you saying that whatever the Bible says, I don't need it as I go through this process of deconstruction. And this is the heart and the problem of this deconstruction movement, is because it doesn't start with the Bible. It doesn't keep the Bible central in the process of the person refining their faith. It doesn't do that. It starts to question. It starts to put the Bible basically put the Bible on trial and say, while I figure you out, I can do what I want to do. This is in no way, shape, or form saying that people, good Christians, don't have doubts, don't have questions about the Bible, don't have issues that they are working through in their faith. This approach does not in any way, shape, or form keep the Bible central. It just does not. This approach elevates one's own feelings and causes you to act out of those feelings and make decisions that you ultimately make based on those feelings. So I just want to speak to my brothers and sisters who love Lecrae, and yes, there's good reason to love Lecrae. I get it. Like he earlier on, he spoke boldly about the faith and it just really talked about going hard for the Lord and just being a rebel and all these just good. There was those volumes of music that were edifying and just spiritually would just ignite you. And I love a lot of his earlier work, but we know that there's been a shift, and this shift happened a long time ago. And at some point, we need to basically be able to say that, look, I'm not even trying to kick him out of the kingdom or anything like that. That's between him and the Lord. But I think at some point we need to make a decision as to whether or not it's wise to follow him on the journey that he's going on. And I would submit to you that it is not wise to go on this journey that he's going on with him. Ask questions, talk to people. There's a lot of great teachers, even online, who I would love to point you to, who can answer tough questions for you. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we know that it's going to require faith, man. This is a faith walk. We know that and we understand that. But there are answers. And this is not an irrational faith. We're not like crazy people out here following some mythological figure. We're following the risen Christ. We have good reason to believe that Jesus is who he says he is, and that he died on the cross for the sins of all those who would believe in him. And 3 days later, he rose from the grave. So, if then you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on earth. All right. God bless y'all. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.